Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, Insider Indianapolis Star, talking to you about Indiana 60, Iowa 85. Obviously, Mike Nizilik in Iowa City tonight, but still talking to you from home. Watched the game like probably many of you did. Listen, let's talk about the loss first, just the specifics of this game. Indiana played poorly, pretty much wire to wire. I'm looking at the box score up here on the monitor. Indiana really struggled with turnovers and with pace. Indiana was getting sped up early, went down 21-8, and then Indiana put a run into Iowa that got I think it was a 20-4 run into Iowa that pushed Indiana ahead by 3. And from that point, Iowa just kind of took the game away from Indiana. It was 28-25 with 6:38 left in the first half when Cannon Carlisle hit, I think, his second shot of the game. And that was with 6:38 left. It was in double figures less than 5 minutes later. Indiana was down 10 at halftime, and it only got worse in the second half. No Indiana starter finished better than minus 18 in the plus minus. The worst number among that 5 was minus 36. Only 2 Indiana players didn't finish underwater in the plus minus. Only 2 Indiana players scored in double figures. Indiana had more turnovers than assists, 16-15. That, not surprisingly, led to a ton of Iowa points. Iowa scored 24 of its 85 points off of turnovers. I think maybe one of the most concerning things for Indiana in this game was just how completely out of their offense they got. And this is, again, if we're talking about the specific context of this game, Iowa's not a very good defensive team, but they do tend to, on occasion, force games like this where they apply scoreboard pressure, which makes you feel like you've got to play too fast. You lose your poise, you rush possessions, you turn the ball over, you dig a big hole for yourself. And then by the time, you've got your feet underneath you, it's a 15, 16, 17-point lead. And you've just kind of got nothing left to fight for. But on an adjusted basis, Iowa was allowing, according to Kim Pomeroy, these are Kim Pom numbers now, on an adjusted basis, Iowa had been allowing 1.22 points per possession to opponents in Big Ten play through 4 Big Ten games. Their lowest number in a single game in Big Ten competition this season was Nebraska, when they allowed Nebraska 1.079 points per possession. Nebraska scored 87 points in that game. Indiana, again, these are Kim Pom numbers. Indiana only averaged 0.835 points per possession. Like this was a dramatic departure from what Iowa has been defensively all year long. And certainly against this level of competition, certainly against, when we're talking about Big Ten competition, high major competition, etc. If you look at Iowa's first 4 Big Ten games, they allowed 79 points, 85 points, of course, the 116 points at Wisconsin, and then 87 points in an overtime win against Nebraska. They also allowed 89 points to Iowa State. They allowed 77 in a game earlier to South Dakota. They allowed 88 to Utah in just before Christmas. The fact that Indiana couldn't even get past 60 is a real concern for this specific performance, because the thing that Indiana kind of has been able to rely on through a lot of this season, not all of it, but a lot of it, is the ability to score the ball. But this was a lot like, this wasn't like Gonzaga, where Indiana was competitive for a while, then Gonzaga just kind of took the game away. And this wasn't like Nebraska, where obviously Indiana was very competitive in that game until about the last 6 or 7 minutes. This was a lot like Louisville, where it felt like, Indiana kind of got rocked back on its heels pretty much from the start and never really recovered. They did have that run to get back in it, to take a brief lead, but it always felt like Indiana was in danger of something resembling this. I think this is probably the extreme end of the outcome spectrum. But if we do want to zoom out here, at least briefly, I think the problem for Indiana is how common this has become. And listen, it's not like Indiana doesn't have its share of blowout losses in Big Ten play in the last 20 years. But it's Mike Woodson's job now to stop this trend, and he emphatically has not. He's 35-31 in Big Ten play, and that's just regular season games, not counting the tournament, Big Ten tournament. He is 35-31 in the regular season in conference play across the last 3+ seasons at Indiana. Of his 31 losses, 16 have come by 10 or more points. 12 have come by 15 or more points, and including this game tonight, 5 have come by 20 or more points. If it weren't for a couple late buckets, Indiana would have suffered, in all likelihood, its first 30-point loss in conference play in 8 years on Saturday night. And I think what's particularly pronounced about this game is, there's kind of a twofold impact when you have games like this. Number one is that it losing games like this makes it easier to lose them like this further down the line, because even with all the best will in the world, it makes it easier for guys to lose faith in the process. It makes it easier for guys to, I don't want panic feels like a bit of an extreme word, but start to rush, start to press, start to kind of go it alone to fix problems that need team solutions, not individual solutions. It kind of opens up wounds that can be hard to close. And that in turn can lead to this kind of idea, and this is what I'm going to write about my Insider tonight. That in turn can kind of lead to this this feeling that like momentum can never be built, that progress can never really be truly made, certainly truly trusted, when you consistently feel like there's just another game like this lurking around the corner. When you consistently feel like you can't trust the idea that there's not going to be one of these big, ugly, sort of lopsided defeats that just, and I mean, we talked so much in the build up to this. Indiana had won 9 of its last 10. Again, even that Nebraska game had been competitive for long stretches, and in that stretch of 9 wins in 10, Indiana had beaten 4 teams in the KenPom top 100. It had beaten, I think, 6 teams in the KenPom top 150. It had beaten 3 Big Ten teams, and gotten off to a 4-1 Big Ten start, its best start in, I believe, since 2016. There was kind of this feeling that Indiana was maybe building a little bit of momentum, that maybe some of the hard lessons of November and December were starting to manifest into some progress, even without Malik Renew, who was out again injured on Saturday night. But again, it's hard to sort of have faith in the idea that progress is made when it always seems like Indiana runs into a wall like this one at some point. And that's a difficult circle to square. That's a hard narrative to kind of get your arms around and not feel a little bit sort of controlled by at a certain point. I think that's a danger for Indiana as much as anything else. We'll wrap it there for tonight. I got some writing to do. Indiana is 13-4 now, 4-2 in the Big Ten. They have Illinois at home on Tuesday night. That begins a stretch of, I think, 11 straight games that would count, or maybe it's 10 straight games that would count as quad 1 wins. The only team in that stretch that's not ranked 31st or better in Kim Pomeroy right now is Northwestern away on January 22nd. So there are opportunities to kind of bury this loss, to put it in the rear view. Illinois is going to be a tough game on Tuesday night. Indiana could really stand to win it. But again, there's the micro, which is this is a tough loss. Indiana's got to rally from quickly. There's the macro, which is you suffer enough of these and it starts to feel like they become too normalized for anybody to really trust that there's not one just sort of waiting, at the next hurdle. So we will obviously be in Assembly Hall Tuesday night for the Illinois game. But until then, from the Indianapolis Star, I'm Zach Osterman. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.